himself, right? So this was my CV before while I was in Wipro, and so this really did not have a lot of things, and it had my academic project, right? So if you don't really have a lot of things to put on your resume, it's totally fine. Keep it short, but keep it relevant. The second thing that you can do is but you can participate at coding challenges. So when I say participate at coding challenges, what I basically mean is there are websites like HackerRank and HackerEarth. So they organize coding challenges. So I have this site open here. So you can see that there are multiple hackathons going on and there are multiple hiring challenges going on. This is Zeta Hacks, this is American Express Code, something, right? So these are basically challenges. If you open this and if you open this, you can see that these are hackathons, and this probably has prize money, not jobs. But basically, they have coding challenges, which uh, at the end give you interview calls, right? So I would suggest participate in these hackathons and coding challenges. These will also have eligibility. Sometimes they mention that you should be 2019 pass out or 2018 pass out. uh, I would still suggest, if you're not eligible, apply for these things, right? Go through the coding challenge. That'll be a good practice, right? Even if you don't get a call at the end, it does not really matter. You came here for the purpose of practice, right? Yeah, I would still suggest, go to this website, hackerert.com/challenges, apply to everything that you see, and uh, sit on a weekend and take the challenge. If you fail, it does not really matter. If you pass, it's great, and if you get a call, that's a dream, right? So I would suggest, go to these websites and take up the challenge. And my first call at Amazon that I got while I was 6 months into Wipro was from HackerEarth. I was not even thinking about it, right? I had not thought in my dreams that I would get a call from Amazon while working for Wipro and having no projects of my own, right? So, but I did get a call, and that was because I was uh, appearing for these challenges on HackerEarth. Okay, right. So that was participated coding challenges. The third thing is reach out to recruiters. Okay, so when I say reach out to recruiters, what I mean is we can use LinkedIn in a great way to actually connect with good people, right? And recruiters are responsible to get people from the pool of candidates that they have and give them jobs, and they're paid for that, right? So it's okay to reach out to recruiters, send out your CV, and send out your resume, and ask them if there is any relevant jobs available, right? Because they will get paid, and that's their job. When you reach out to recruiters, what I basically mean is you can use LinkedIn. So go to linkedin.com, uh, search for a recruiter. I'm sorry about the internet. It's a little slow here. So you'll see a number of recruiters from multiple companies. And if you have a specific company that you want to try at, what you can do is filter it out by something like that: Amazon, Google, Facebook, right? Show results. So you have all these, right? Send out requests to all of them. And when they connect, send out a message. Use these connections, use LinkedIn to its best, right? And LinkedIn is an amazing resource that is available for free to you, and use this to the best that you can. And the last thing that you, okay, so yeah, so I'm sorry, so this was not complete here. So basically, build a strong LinkedIn profile, send out emails and messages on LinkedIn, and make good connections on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has this profile strength thing. So if you look at my profile, I'll just go there. So this says all star, right? So LinkedIn has multiple levels to profiles, which are intermediate, beginner, things like that. And when you achieve all star, you basically mean this basically means that you have all the checks passed for a good profile, and your visibility on LinkedIn increases. When recruiters search for people who are open to roles, they find your profiles on the top. So always try to have a good profile on LinkedIn, and build an all-star profile. Connect with the right people, interact with the right content, do not interact with the wrong content. right? That is very important. There are people who post irrelevant job postings, and people and ask them to reply with a yes if you're interested. Most of those are not really true. So interact with the right content, reach out to recruiters. And the last thing is get a referral. So this answers the question that I got in a meet a few some time back. Is it important to connect with alumni to get internships? So what referral is, it basically is one employee working at a particular company can refer your profile to the recruiters at that particular company and tell them that this guy or this girl is somebody who is looking out for a job, and if the profile is strong, you get a call, right? And the employee who referred is actually rewarded with some either financially or some goodies or things like that. So people are open to do that. And when the person you are approaching is somebody from your college, he will be more than happy to do it for you. He or she will be more than happy to do it for you. So if you reach out to let's say me, or somebody who has studied in AEC for a particular role in the company that the person is working for, I'm very sure the person will be very, very happy to refer you if the profile is strong. One tip here is when you reach out to people on LinkedIn for a referral, don't just send a hi. So Nihalda can validate this. What I did was when I found out his profile on LinkedIn, and I saw that he was working for Informatica, which he still was. Yesterday he quit, I think. Um, I sent him just a hi, and then the next day he responded back with a hi. And then I said him that I am from AEC, I'm looking for a job. Can you help me get a referral at Informatica? He told me, yes, please send your CV the next day. And the next day again, I sent the a CV. So it took me 5 days to actually send my CV to him, right? So what you actually should do is do not send a hi ever. Send out your introduction in the first message, say who you are, say what you want, and attach your resume um, in there itself, right? And when the guy or when the girl will check the message, if it is relevant, he or she will do it right away, right? So never send out never send out just a hi. That's one tip that you can do, and that's a mistake that I had made. So this is about getting an interview. And now, before jumping into cracking the interview, which is our step 2, uh, let's talk about what an interview looks like, right? So most tech companies, be it Flipkart, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, or Swiggy, or whatever, will have a similar setup for the interview that they have for their hiring process. So the first thing is they will either have an online assessment round, which will have 1 or 2 coding problems, or some companies have a machine coding round. And the machine coding round is basically object-oriented design round. They will give you a problem like a parking lot, or maybe a hotel management system or a hostel management system, and you have to write the classes for it and objects for it and things like that. So this is basically a coding round, um, which is the first assessment round. Once you clear this, most companies will have 2 to 4 problem solving rounds. These problem solving rounds are the most important rounds. Probably, yeah, I'm not sure if they are most important, but these are the rounds that happen most frequently. So these rounds are of the sort that they will give you problems which are based on data structures and algorithms, right? Usually the interviews last for 45 minutes to 1 hour, and they give you 1 or 2 questions which you need to solve while in the interview, and write the code, and the code should be working, right? So that's the problem solving round. There is another thing called system design round, which is more for the senior positions, not for SD1s and entry level positions. So it's not important for us right now to talk about it. And the last round is the hiring manager round, which is basically it's the manager of the team that you'll be joining. And the hiring manager round is more of a chill session. It's kind of a discussion, getting to know each other more, getting to know each other's interests and things that you have done previously and things like that. So this is the standard coding interview that happens across the tech industry, right? So maybe we can take another pause here and look at if there is any other questions. We can also check YouTube and Instagram. Maybe if there are questions that people are posting, we can take that.
Yes, Dada, there are no questions over Instagram and YouTube.
Sure, not a problem. Okay. All right. So we have spoken about the coding interview. This is the way that an interview happens at a tech company. Now, the next step, the big step is crack the interview, right? How do you crack an interview? So the very first step is, uh, okay. So the very first step is learn a language. Okay. So it does not really matter what language you want to learn. These coding interviews are open to any language that you want to bring in. So when you are going to an interview, the language that you take in to solve the problem, it does not really matter. I mean, it is better if you use a language that most people understand, because the interviewer is also somebody like you, right? The day job is being an engineer, and interviewing is just a side thing that the interviewer is doing. So pick up any language, be it C++, Java, Python, or whatever. uh, Almost all good companies will never specify that you have to use this particular language for this particular problem. It never really happens. And the thing is that learning a language is easy. I mean, um, learning the concepts is the main thing. You don't really, you cannot really teach the concept to somebody, but uh, once you know the concepts, picking up a new language is pretty easy. In fact, a fun fact is that I used Golang in Razorpay, and I know nothing about Golang right now, right? So, but Golang is everything that I did in Razorpay. So learn a language, and it can be anything, any language that rocks your boat. The second thing is, once you learn the language, practice in it and be consistent. Be comfortable in the language, such a way that given a problem, you can start coding on it. So learn the language in such a to such a confident level that you can actually solve problems on it. And the third thing is, build a habit to code. This is related to the second thing. When you keep practicing, you are actually building the habit to code, right? So keep it consistent and build the habit to code. If you put out a long time break, you actually take time again to come back to it, right? And the fourth thing is, after you are done with learning a language, prepare for coding interviews. Focus, use the language that you have learned and use it around, focusing it for only preparation of technical interviews. Okay, sure. Now I will talk about building a coding culture in campus. But before that, there's a story time. I'll go back to the meet. Uh, I'll just ask a question. I want yes or no. Is it necessary to get into competitive programming? How to start open source collaborations? Sure. The host, can you keep a track of these questions so that we can answer them after some time?
Yes, Sada, sure. We are
Sure,
keeping a
Dada.
track, sir.
Sure, sure. All right. So, has anybody here heard of Jennifer DeWalt? So, this question is open to the people who are watching on YouTube and Instagram as well. Has anybody heard of Jennifer DeWalt? Uh, Answer with a yes or a no. I'm okay with that. Most people have not heard of her. No, 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 no. Okay, sure, it's okay. Uh, okay, Palash Bora has heard of her. Palash, would you mind unmuting yourself and maybe speaking about it?
Yeah, as far as I know, like she is one of a web developer who is currently on a project of making 180 websites in 180 days.
Yeah, yeah, right. So Jennifer DeWalt was a lady who was wanting to code, okay, but she had no experience, no real experience around coding. So what she did was, to learn that, she decided that she will code every day, and to actually keep it consistent, she set it out to people that she will launch one website every single day, right? While saying that, what she did was she built this thing, jenniferdew.com/index.html. This is a simple HTML page, but you can see that she built one page every single day from day one to day 180, and she never missed it. It was not that she missed the day and she would do two pages the next day. It was not that. She did one page every single day. So if somebody like her, who has no experience around coding, can do something like this, something great as this one, I am very sure that you, as engineering students, can do way more, right? Now there is this AEC coding club, right? Has anybody heard of Sdslabs? So that's another coding club from one particular college. Have you heard of Sdslabs? Okay, I'm taking that as a no. Uh, so Sdslabs is the coding club of IIT Roorkee. I think I can pull that up. Sdslabs. So Sdslabs are a bunch of designers and developers who do this and that at IIT Roorkee. So this is basically the coding club at IIT Roorkee, and they build a lot of projects, right? So on their website, it's somehow stuck right now. You can actually see the projects that they are working on, and it's really good. They are very active, and they are also having alumni who works with them, right? That is what makes their coding club really strong, right? So one good thing that I want to mention from Sdslabs is that Razorpay is a product that came out of Sdslabs. It was not built in Sdslabs, but people from Sdslabs came out and started building Razorpay. Uh, Also, Zomato was actually a product. I mean, it was, I think, a college canteen menu product, an app which showed the menu items that are available in the college canteen, right? So, which came out as Zomato, which we all are now buying stocks for. So, what you can do is you already have the coding club, participate and organize hackathons, contribute and collaborate on GitHub, and connect with alumni. So I don't know if you all have a Slack uh, workspace. You can build a Slack workspace and add everybody who is actually interested in coding. Probably send out invites to alumni as well. If they want to join, they would. Build a organization on GitHub. Start projects within the campus itself, right? So if somebody like Jennifer Duval could do that, I can challenge that. Everybody in this coding club can actually build an Android app for the campus, right? Find a need, build an app. Now everybody is studying from home. There are a lot of needs, and you actually can do it on your own. So do that. Add people to Slack. Start writing code on GitHub, and build apps for the campus, right? So this is how you can build a good coding culture in the campus. So now, when you are preparing for coding interviews, we need to have a study plan. For coding interviews, there are two things that I would suggest preparing for. The very first thing is basics of CS. And the second thing is data structures and algorithms and problems around data structures and algorithms, right? And when I say basics of CS, what I basically mean is operating systems, database management systems, and computer networking, right? And for operating systems, what I basically mean is things like process management, scheduling algorithms, deadlocks, and stuff like that, right? And for database management system, what I mean is relational databases, NoSQL databases, what is ACID properties, CAP theorems, and things like that. And for computer networking, which I did not really study a lot, there are things like TCP/IP protocols and things like that. So for the very basic of it, computer science students are already studying this or will study this as a course, but students who do not belong to computer science can spend some time and understand the very basic stuff from these subjects, right? And to understand this, and also for data structures and algorithms, we have multiple things like we can divide that into multiple things like arrays, linked list, stack and queue, hashing, and which includes maps and sets. Then we have trees and graphs, which will have problem on depth for search and breadth for search and traversals. Then we can move to greedy algorithms, recursion, memorization, and dynamic programming. There's also sorting and searching, which I left out here by mistake, which I'll fix, and you can find this presentation on my slides profile. So these are the two things that you really need to focus on when you're preparing for coding interviews. And we'll go into depth of these things in our next slides, right? And for these things, I used a few books. For operating system, it was Operating Systems by Shilber Shads, and the same author also had a book for database management systems. For algorithms, there's a Bible called Algorithms by Thomas Corman, and for data structures, there's a book by Narasimha Karmanchi, right? And so these books are more around theory. I won't suggest you to read them from page 1 to page to the last page. Just pick up a topic which you are having some doubts on. Read the book, and that's it. If you are doing it just for interview, you don't really have to go through the entire theory, right? So another resource that I would want to share is the Google Interview University. So I have it open somewhere here. So this guy is somebody who was working somewhere for 15 years, and he wanted to move to software engineering, right? And he had no experience at all. So what he did was he studied 8 months full time for software engineering, and he made this amazing resource which says what he did and how he did it. So he has a daily plan. He has all the things sorted accordingly for data structures, things like this, for trees sorting, and everything he has sorted out amazingly in this resource. And you can actually go through this. I'll share every resource that I have spoken about in this talk with the organizers, and you can have it from them. So this is a great resource, and you can go through this. This is amazing as a plan. I mean, I referred to it myself when I was preparing for things like that. Okay, so this is one thing. And after having the basics, when we talk about interview preparation, we need to focus on 3 things. The first thing is problem solving on data structures and algorithms. The second is basics in OS, DBMS, and networking, which we spoke about already. And the third is object-oriented design, right? So object-oriented design is needed for the machine coding round, which some companies have. Flipkart has the first round as machine coding round, right? So for problem solving and data structures, there are 3 books that I would suggest. Actually, 2 of these are considered again as Bibles. The first is Cracking the Coding Interview, and the second is Programming Interview Expose. I have never touched Programming Interview Expose myself, but I have used Cracking the Coding Interview, which is amazing. And the third book, which I would suggest, I have not seen people suggesting it, is Data Structures and Algorithms Made Easy. I have found this book to be really easy, and it makes things very easy to understand. So I have the books with me. This is Cracking the Coding Interview, which my brother had bought, and I took it from him. And this is Data Structures and Algorithms Made Easy. This is a book that my roommate bought, who is also an Asian, Nasir Ahmed. He bought this, but he never studied, so I took it from him. So these 3 books are amazing. I would suggest probably you can buy one of these or find an ebook online, but these are amazing. You can study the data structures and algorithms from here, right? And apart from books, if you want to do it on websites, we have LeetCode, and there are other websites like InterviewBit and Geeks for Geeks. But I prefer LeetCode a lot. So I have kept it at number 1 and everything else at number 2, right? So I'll just show you what LeetCode is. So this is LeetCode. What they provide is a set of questions, right? You can find questions based on topics and things like that. So if you open a question like this, I already have it open here. So it'll tell you the text, it'll give you inputs and outputs and things like that, and you have to write your code here. So this is exactly what an interviewer actually asks, right? So all the data structures and algorithms problems that a tech company would ask you are the questions that are present in LeetCode. These are the kind of questions that are being asked in interviews, right? So how do you use LeetCode effectively, right? Instead of talking about it in slides, I would actually show you in the LeetCode website. So what you can do is log into LeetCode. When you are done studying a topic on data structures, let's say you studied arrays and you are comfortable with arrays now, what you would do is come to LeetCode, and you can see multiple questions, right? So what you can do is go to tags and filter out the topic that you have studied. So you have studied arrays, which I have already filtered. Now it will show you questions only on arrays, right? And when you're starting out, you probably won't be able to solve every question on your own. So another suggestion that I will give you is sort the question based on difficulty, right? So you can see that all the easy comes at the first, right? So pick up a question, read the problem, So read the problem that comes here and then understand it. Now to solve it, the thing that you can do is you can pick up a notebook and write write what you understood from it, right? And on the notebook itself, try and solve it. Try finding the pattern or try finding whatever you can do to solve it. After you're done solving it on a paper, I would suggest to translate it to a code and write it here and run it. Uh, if it passes, it's great. If it does not, try another time, right? Once you're done trying multiple times, if you're done, then it's great. If you're not, then you can move to the discuss section. Okay, so in the discuss section, you can see a lot of people actually post solutions and also explanations. So you can find things like explanations. Okay, so with video explanation and things like that. So people solve this and they post out a video as well. So you can use this discuss sections very effectively to understand it. But I would suggest do not come to the solution and discuss section without actually trying it. Try it for a few times. And when you cannot do it any further, come to discuss, understand it, and then do not copy the code. Once you understood it, do it on the paper again, write the code, and then submit the solution. That's the right way to use lead code, right? So that's one thing. And the last thing is, when you guys are doing it, when you all are doing it, I would suggest you to form groups, maybe in hostels. Oh, now you're staying at home, right? So you can form groups in your branch, maybe a group of 3 or 4 people at max. So what you can do is everybody can solve a few set of problems every week, and at the weekend you all can gather around and discuss what you have solved, right? So I had my own group in my house in Bangalore. When I stayed there, I had my friends staying with me who were also software engineers and they were also preparing. So we used to solve problems, and sometimes we used to sit together and discuss the solutions. So it helped us learn from each other a lot, which was a great thing. So I would suggest form groups, help each other out. Things that you learn, you can teach others. Things that you don't know, you can seek help from others. So that's a great way to actually learn. This is how you can use lead code effectively. And once you started to use lead code, how do you get better is basically by being consistent. When I say being consistent, what I mean is, if you solve one problem every day for 7 days, you will be solving 7 problems a week, right? That is way better than solving 7 problems on a weekend and solving nothing on during the weekdays, right? So what I mean is, solve one problem every day instead of solving 7 problems on a weekend. Doing that, you are being consistent, and doing that, you are not pressuring yourself. That's how you can be consistent. And once you solve some good amount of problems in one particular topic, you can find patterns in it, right? And when you find a pattern, you can actually use the same pattern in another question. And once you are into lead code, when you're doing it, I would suggest, since you have done one problem already, don't just leave it out there. Revisit the same question once again, sometime later, maybe 2 months later or 3 months later or things like that. Revisit the question. It will help you to understand it and remember it well. And when I say pattern, what I wanted to show was that the questions that these companies ask is actually very, very similar to questions that are on the lead code. Most of the times the question will be exactly the same. Sometimes the language would be different, but the question is the same. So this is a question that I recently was taking campus interviews in a few college. So this was a question that I had asked. So I would ask every one of you to go through this question for a minute. Sure. I hope you have read the question. So what I'm saying is, I have a car, electric car, which starts from the first index and it needs to move to the last index. And every number that is here tells me the maximum distance the car can cover if I'm at that particular index. So if I'm at first index, that is the index 0, I can go a maximum distance of 2. But if I go to 3, the second index, I can travel another 3 distance, right? And I can reach the end. That's my question. Can I reach the end? This is one standard problem that Flipkart asked in the campus interviews in the recent campus drive. Now, if you go to this link, I can show you. So if you go to lead code, go to problems and search for jump game. You can see that this is the exact same question that I just changed the language for. Even the inputs are the same, right? So companies are notorious in doing that. They pick up questions from lead code, they just change the language, and that's it. So if somebody has practiced this problem on lead code, is guaranteed to answer this question in the campus drive, right? So this is what I mean. If you are good at lead code, you are actually good at interview problems, real interview problems from these companies, right? And this is once rough timeline that I have built for a year maybe, and this can be changed if you have more than a year, which most of you will, because most of you belong to second year things. So what you can do is you can spend some time to build the foundation where you will be learning a language, you will be learning the basics of DS and algo, you'll be learning the basics of object oriented programming, and then very basics of computer science concepts. Learn a language, practice in it, understand the concepts behind it, build a small projects around it, learn DS and algo, learn the theory around it, understand what DS and algo are, the different data structures, and object oriented programming as well. Once you are good at that, we will move to practicing for interviews, right? When we practice for interviews, we basically mean we will solve problems. We will practice machine coding problems, which are object-oriented design problems. And I'll share resources for all of these. Sharing for solving problems, we already have lead code, and I'll share resources to practice machine coding stuff. And while doing so, we will also revisit the computer science stuff that we have studied in the first building foundation stage. And after this, if you have very few amount of time left for one scheduled interview, what I would suggest is revisit the problems that we have already studied, right? Do mock interviews where the groups that you had formed with each other, you can do mock interviews. One student can interview the other one, and in return, the other one can interview the other one, right? This can actually build a nice practice. So there is also another resource for this. So if you go to interviewbit.com, I think I have it open. Okay, I don't. So interviewbit.com. Even in lead code, we have this interview section, right? So if you go to interview and then do online interview, this gives you a mock interview session, which you can practice on. Even on interview bit, you have this mock interview thing where you can go and you can actually find somebody who is online right now and have a mock interview. In the session, the interviewer will ask you a problem for 45 minutes, and the next 45 minutes, you will be asking the interviewer another problem for him or her, right? So these are two amazing resources for mock interviews, and mock interviews actually help a lot. So when I was preparing, I had the schedule on myself that every night, Monday to Friday, I used to do mock interviews on Ubit. And I can say that has actually helped me build amazing confidence around interviewing. And I have interviewed a lot, right? And these are all the things that I said you need to do. There are also there are a few things that people don't need to do, and you need to make sure that you do not do. The first thing is, do not fall for paid courses that say guaranteed job at FANG, right? The first thing is, I'm not a big fan of the word FANG because Facebook does not have a tech office in India. Apple does not really hire a lot from juniors. Netflix is not in India and does not hire junior engineers, and Google. And when people say job at FANG, they basically mean job at Amazon, right? Do not fall for these paid courses that guarantee a job at FANG. Do not fall for that. Do not focus too much on frameworks, technologies, and stuff like that. Focus on computer science basics, right? You might be overwhelmed, but take it easy. You can plan ahead and execute accordingly, right? You do not need to be overwhelmed, because we saw that there are a lot of things that you need to cover to make a switch into the career of a software development role. But you do not need to get overwhelmed. If you plan ahead, you can actually make it through it. I have seen a lot of people. In fact, in Amazon, I have seen a guy who had just studied until class 10, and after that he did only coding. He was practicing coding, so the degree did not really matter, right? So do not get overwhelmed. If somebody like him can do it, anybody can, right? And the second thing was, do not focus on frameworks. It's good to have, but it's not really a must. And in the interview, when you're in an interview, if you are given a question that you don't really know about, if you don't have much idea around it, it's okay to say that you don't know it. Most interviewers will not throw questions and expect answers from you. The interviews are something like, they will present a question and they will want a discussion. They will talk to you about an optimal solution, maybe that they can come together, right? It's not like college vivas where teachers throw questions and you need to throw out objective answers. It's not like that, right? So if you don't know something, it's okay to say. So that's all. It's not a Q&A, but rather a discussion. And the third thing is, speak while you think. So the interviewers, when they give you a question, do not take the question and think about it and do not speak at all, because the interviewer needs to understand what you are doing, right? Only then the interviewer can help you. If you're going the wrong way, the interviewer can actually pitch in ideas so that you understand the right way to go ahead. So speak while you think. So these are things that you need to do in an interview, and we don't really need to focus a lot about what you need to do on an interview right now, because we are just starting to prepare for interviews, right? So we can skip this for now. This is something that you just need to know. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. I spoke about 2 steps, but the 2 steps together are one single process, right? Now I saw that there were a few people from 2019 batch and 2021 batch, right? I want to know if there are any people who is live right now from 2019 batch and has actually applied to a good company. So if you are from 2019 or 2021 batch or 2020 batch or anywhere before that, please tell me in yes or no if you have applied to any such companies in the chat. I'll just wait for a yes or a no. Okay, so since we see no answer, I'll take that as a no, right? And that's the point. That's the first step, right? You need to get an interview to get the job, right? If you have not applied to any of the companies, you won't get a call. And if you're not getting a call, cracking the interview is not the thing, right? So the first thing is get an interview. The second thing is crack the interview. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. And one last thing is that the interviews last for 45 minutes, right? The interviewer will put up a limit to your time, and you have 45 minutes to prove how good you are to the interviewer. But there's no limit on the amount of preparation that you can go through. There's no limit that an interviewer can put on you that you can prepare on this amount of time, right? You can invest as much amount of time that you want to prepare for it and show your best in the 45 minutes. So there is also luck involved. Sometimes you get a question which you have no idea on, you cannot figure it out in the interview, and sometimes you get a question which you have already solved. So luck is also important, but the practice improves your luck, right? So yeah, that's about it. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And that is the end of my presentation, and we are now open to questions.
Dada, we were having some questions a few times back. So can I? It would be great if we could answer those questions.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, few minutes back, Anshuman asked that is it necessary to get into competitive programming?
Okay. Sure. It is not necessary to get into competitive programming, but it is always a good to have thing. And it totally depends on what stage you are at. if you are somewhere around second year, third year of your college, you have a lot of time. If somebody comes and tells me that they don't really have a lot of time to do this in AEC, I know that's bullshit, right? The people have a lot of time in AEC. So if you are at second year, third year, or maybe fourth year, yes, why not? You have time, you should do it. It's good to have. But if you're already out of college and if you are searching for jobs and you're already working somewhere, you don't really have a lot of time, it's not a must. If you don't have it, it's not something that will block you from finding jobs. Yeah.
Also, Dada, we had a question. Saurabh asked that how to start with open source contribution.
Okay, sure. That's a good one. So the very first step is open an account on GitHub, right? Most of the projects, open source projects, are on GitHub. So what you can do is log into GitHub. You will have one particular language of your choice, right? And if you open GitHub, I can actually show it to you here. GitHub.com. I probably don't have my screen shared, right? So yeah, what you can do is there's this explore repository section where you get repositories that you can contribute to. If you go to explore more, you can see a lot of repositories. Repositories are basically code bases where you can where you can just open it and fork it on your GitHub account and start contributing. So what you can do is you can come to this page, you can filter out repositories based on your interest and based on your interest in one particular language and start out. The very first very small thing that you can do is when you use a library or when you use a tool that is open source, you understand how open source library works, right? And once you understand it, you can actually check the code for that. When you check the code for that, you can find issues there. You can go to a repository and you can go to this issues section. And here you can see that people are posting things like diff removed and something doesn't work, right? And if you are a user of this library called Javers or Javers, you know what this guy is talking about, right? You can open this thing, maybe read the code and start contributing to it if you understand it enough. But if you're starting out, if you don't really understand it, you can also contribute to the documentation. You can see that there's a documentation which says how to use it, right? And you can, when you start using it, you will read this documentation and start using it. There will be times when you don't really understand the documentation because the documentation is not really great. It's not easy to understand. What you can do is instead of complaining about it, change the documentation. That's one very small step that you can take to contribute to open source. Yeah. Sure. Can we have the next one?
Thank you, Dada, for the answer. Now, next we have Ankur Jyoti Sarma asked that what are the languages required to make into Flipkart?
Okay, sure. So to make into Flipkart, you don't really need to know one particular language. It can be anything. And I personally used to code in Java. And I know friends who have coded in Python or Golang and have made it into Java and are working in my team, right? So to make it into Flipkart or to make it into any good company as such, you don't really need to know one particular language. You just need to know one language well enough. Okay, so you don't really need to know one particular language for one company and the other one for another company. You need to know one language and know that language well enough. That's it. And if you want to know what we work on in Flipkart, we use majorly Java, and yes, that is it. Sure. Can we have the next one?
The next question is asked by Nitupal Bora. How important are time and space complexity analysis of a code during an interview?
Sure. Okay. I'm sorry I did not cover this thing. I should have. And so the problem solving and data structures thing that we discussed about, for coding interviews are majorly revolved around time complexity and space complexity. So what happens is when they give you a question, the solution that you provide will have some time complexity and the space complexity, right? And uh, the interview is about that. We have to optimize the space complexity and the time complexity, and it's actually very important. We try to optimize it and bring it to the best possible time and space complexity that we possibly can. So that's the most important thing while solving coding question in a technical interview. To give you an idea, somebody who does not really have a lot of idea on what a tech interview is, there's a very small video which was published by Google. I'll just give me just a few minutes. I'll post the link on the chat, and I would want you to store this video and watch it after the session. You'll understand what I'm talking about. Just give me a second. I'm looking up for it. Copy link. Sure. I have shared the link on the chat. I would want you to open it, keep it in your Opens tab, and watch it later after the session is over. And this will give you the idea of what I'm talking about when I say space and time complexity, right? So space and time complexity is actually very important, and that's the main focus of the problem solving and data structures around in the technical interview. Yeah, thanks. I hope I answered your question right.
Next, Dada, we have a question from our member from the core team only. Recon asked that, Dada, how to master in topics like tree, backtracking, graphs, which are tough to visualize?
Sure. And yes, it is very true that topics like backtracking, graphs, and trees are hard to visualize because you cannot really draw those things out on a paper, right? Drawing an array on a paper is very easy and you can iterate through it. But drawing a graph on a paper which connects to a lot of nodes, it's not really easy. So one suggestion here is, even I found these very, very hard, and backtracking was another thing that was very horrific to me. The only suggestion that I have for this is, instead of fearing this, you can try solving them. And when you do that, when you are actually practicing questions um, that are related to trees or backtracking and graphs, you are building yourself towards it. And I was also scared about graph problems, but one thing that I noticed in graph after actually practice is that every graph problem is the same. You will either use BFS or DFS and you will solve the problem. So practice is the main thing that you can do to master topics like tree, backtracking, graphs, and things like that. Yeah. So practice is it.
Okay, so Dada, Sandeep Tiwari has an interesting question on the time limit exceeding part. He is currently doing competitive programming using Python, and he is quite not sure about switching to other languages, just because he is not sure if time limit exceeding is going to be an issue while in interviews.
Okay. Okay, so when you say time limit exceeding, do you mean your time limit to solve the problem, or the time limit, the time that the code takes to run? I did not really get that.
He is referring to the time taken by the code to run, as he is saying that Python is probably slower than from C++ and Java.
Okay, all right. So to solve interview problems, I have not really used Python for that purpose. But it should not really matter like that. I mean, if you are writing writing an efficient solution for a problem, the coding website that you're using, maybe LeetCode or InterviewBit, should be optimized enough to know that this is Python and this solution should be taking this much amount of time. It should not really matter. And in an interview, in an actual interview, you will basically be solving it actually on a paper, maybe if it is face-to-face, or you will be solving it on some maybe Google Doc or things like that, right? So it does not really matter a lot, and people understand. It's okay. And the interviewer is actually a developer, right? if the solution is correct, if the solution is the optimal one, and and the platform still says time limit exceeded, the developer would understand that there probably is some problem with the platform, even if you have written an optimal solution. But if the solution is now not optimal and it gives you a time limit exceeded, then the interviewer will actually have a problem with that, and he or she will point it out to you that there is another probably approach which can improve the time complexity. So yeah, and if it is the optimal solution and the platform still says time limit exceeded, in a real life interview, it won't really matter a lot.
Next, Debatosh asked that how to get in IT job when you have completed BCA.
Sure. The steps remain the same. The degree does not really matter. Having a degree helps, but it does not restrict you from applying to jobs. It still remains the same. You have to prepare for the same things, core computer science subjects, data structures and algorithms, and practice for problems around data structures and algorithms, and start applying to jobs and connect with recruiters, right? So that's the way anybody who has done a BCA or maybe passed out right out of school can actually do it. So the steps remain the same for a BCA as well. And thanks, Devatosh, for the question.
The next question is asked by Ankur Jyoti Sharma. Can we make the sites like Flipkart? Is it very hard to make e-commerce platforms?
Dada, your mic is turned off, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Sorry. Yeah. So when you say building a site like Flipkart, so if I have to answer the front end part of it, it's not really that hard. I mean, you have to learn some set of technologies like React and Angular, and I don't really know a lot of front end stuff, but there are tutorials and resources where you can refer to build a clone of these e-commerce platforms or any other platforms, right? So the building the front end requires some skill and time, but you can do it. And for the backend, for the e-commerce, you can still do it. You can build a small e-commerce application of your own. If you learn the bits of it, you can definitely do it. But building something like Flipkart, I mean, cloning exactly the backend that Flipkart has is not really possible, right? Flipkart has 10,000 employees building it every day. So building it exactly like it actually is in production is not really possible, but you can actually try out building a small e-commerce application. And I would actually suggest you guys to do it. Can we have the next one?
Yeah, hello, Dada. Okay, just a small reminder. You guys can now ask your questions directly to Dada. We are you are free to ask questions right now, as Dada is not presenting, so he is open to questions.
Yeah. I can see that there's another question by Asha Sri Sharma. If you can, my question is if someone is interested more in research project or as well as implementation. So can we get into it by clearing exams like bar? Also, at some may even want to get into AEC scores. And my query is if you can prepare for both the previous one. Yeah, so you can actually prepare for both. Preparing for coding interviews that I spoke about, preparing for the basics of computer science, and then solving problems. While at college does not really need your full time, right? The basics of computer science will come up together when you are studying for exams like GATE or ISC or BARC or things like that. You will anyways be studying subjects which are needed for that, right? So you will anyways be studying the basics of the computer science subjects. And apart from that, you just need to find out some time extra for yourself to practice coding interviews. And since you are in college, you still have a lot of time. You can actually do both of them together. You don't really have to practice targeting that I will have to get this job. you can do it as a hobby, and that actually will help you a lot. You can do it. And this answer was for Asha Shri, by the way.
So the Kalpeswar is having a question on how to start or any advice for a beginner in Android development.
Okay. Uh, so I also haven't been an Android developer myself, but I have started Android myself some years back, and I did not continue a lot on it. But to start off, I would suggest. Uh, so one thing that is good for us is that mechanical engineers or civil engineers or electrical engineers don't really have the exact equipment that they will use in their work, right? So an engineer does not have a huge generator at home that they can practice with, which they will be using in their work, right? A mechanical engineer does not really have a electric a motor car maybe to open it, which they will be doing at their job to practice at home, right? They don't have. But for computer science engineers or for software engineers, the laptop that we have at home or the computer that we have at home is equally powerful as the laptop that you will be using at work to do things, to work on things, right? So that's a great thing about software engineering. You have the equipment at your hand. So that's the first need. First need, you need the equipment. The second need is your interest, which you already have since you posted the question. And the third thing is we have resources online, a lot of resources online on YouTube or Udemy. I would suggest go to the free stuff. Yeah, go to YouTube, find a Android development playlist, right? Any developer who's posting tutorials would have a playlist of, let's say, 15 to 20 videos where he or she will be teaching Android development from the basics, and at the end probably will be showing using all the concepts and building a small application. So that's how you probably can start off with Android development. You have the resources available. Just start off and start learning on it.
Dada, we have a question from Rinab. He asked that as a software engineer, do you need to design the UI?
Okay. I personally don't have to. I work for the backend. But if I wanted to, I have the choice to make a move to UI development. If I have the skills, I can move to UI development and I can do design. But I personally don't do it. I work on the backend software development. Yeah, sure. Do we have any question on YouTube or Instagram or somewhere? Is people checking there as well?
No, Dada, not now. As of yet, we do not have any questions there.
Sure, sure.